Egypt around 3000 BC, the time of Dynasty Zero. Around 1 million people live on the Nile, fishermen, farmers, hunters. No single pharaoh rules this divided country. Not yet. But history may hinge on a royal messenger. He's been traveling upstream on the Nile for weeks. He carries an urgent reply to a message sent by King Narmer, the ruler of the country's south. The response could shape the destiny of the entire country, uniting it in peace or plunging it into war. King Narmer wants to expand his increasingly powerful southern kingdom to include the disparate tribes of the north. But the principalities of the delta in the north have always remained beyond his reach. Until recently, little was known about this crucial period in Egypt's history.
We are learning about Dynasty Zero only for the past 10 or 15 years. We had no idea prior to that time that there were kings, powerful rulers in Egypt.
King Narmer has demanded that the northern tribes bow to his rule, preferably without a fight. The messenger finally arrives with a response the king has anxiously awaited. Control of the northern people would magnify Narmer's power and wealth, but the news is disappointing. The tribal chiefs of the Nile Delta defy his demands. They want to remain independent. But their decision apparently won't quell Narmer's grand ambition to rule the whole of Egypt, all the way to the Mediterranean. Experts are just beginning to speculate about Narmer's actions and his actual role in history. After 5 millennia, it's difficult to separate fact from propaganda. Supposedly, this relatively obscure king took up the simple spears and stone clubs of his day and went to war, vanquishing his enemies and uniting the tribes and towns of Egypt into a single kingdom. At least, according to what is now known as the Narmer Palette, the most important source from that time. The 5,000-year-old stone inscription shows Narmer wearing 2 crowns, representing all of Egypt. But does that mean Egypt was founded by force?
Die Darstellung auf der Palette, wo der König mit einer Keule einen Feind niederschlägt, der Feind wird sogar am Nasenseil geführt, sein Kopf wächst aus einem Landeszeichen heraus, aus dem Papyruspflanzen wachsen, lassen keinen Zweifel daran, dass das mit Gewalt geschah.
Some Egyptologists speculate that the tribal leaders had fought each other for generations. But King Narmer sees the bigger picture. He has consolidated his power in the south and assembled several hundred men to expand his domain. The king tells his men that the northern tribes refuse to fall under his rule and that the time to strike is now. But Egyptologist Kent Weeks sees another origin for the Egyptian empire.
I think myself it was largely a peaceful operation. And I think too that it was something that was the result of a long period, a gradual period of assimilation. I don't mean thousands of years, but I certainly mean several generations, during which time this gradual emergence of a unified culture came about.
Could Egypt be united in peace? Or would it take a vicious war to bring the country together in a single empire? Was an act of suppression, an absolute victory over enemy peoples necessary to create a great civilization? The answer to this question is crucial to our understanding the next 3,000 years of Egyptian history. To find that answer, scholars must gather evidence from every corner of the empire. The swampy lands of the Nile Delta, swallowed the secrets of this pre-dynastic period. But the southern desert hides many surprises, including a political power center dating to Dynasty Zero, a place called Abydos. It was a magical settlement, nestled in the desert lowlands next to the Nile River Valley. In this sacred center, the graves of the first pharaohs were discovered. And Abydos may help scientists unravel how Egypt was founded. The excavation here has been the life's work of Egyptologist Günther Dreyer. The ancient ruins speak volumes about early Egyptian architecture, but they're practically silent about how Egypt was founded. These tombs, looted repeatedly over the last 5,000 years, hold little except broken pottery. Dreyer's team spent 30 years meticulously sifting through mountains of sand. Some of the most spectacular finds are no larger than a fingernail, like this evidence of perhaps the world's earliest writing. Next to the tombs of the very first pharaohs lie some of the oldest graves so far, dating back to the 4th millennium BC. It's here, at the edge of this ancient cemetery, that archaeologists found the tomb of the mysterious King Narmer. In fact, it's surprisingly modest for the man who portrayed himself as a great war leader and founder of the Egyptian Empire. And it wasn't even built to last.
Die Gräber sind ja hier eigentlich nur Gruben mit Ziegelausmauerung und sehr fragil. Zum Teil ja auch schon in antiker Zeit eingestürzt. Wir haben sie nach der Ausgrabung und Bauaufnahme wieder zugeschüttet, damit sie erhalten bleiben.
These photographs from Dreyer's 1981 excavation show what Narmer's tomb once looked like. It consisted of 2 simple brick-lined chambers, one for a body, one for a few funerary ornaments. Narmer's generic tomb seems to contradict his grand claim as Egypt's unifier. Just a few hundred years later, Egyptian tombs would grow to epic proportions, taking thousands of workers decades to complete. And entombed within them were rulers so powerful they were venerated like gods. Such achievements were only possible in a unified kingdom, with a single ruler. If Narmer truly unified Egypt, one would think he'd rate that sort of monumental funerary treatment for himself. But apparently not. Could Narmer's glory be nothing but an elaborate fiction? Perhaps. The most important monument to this king is the Narmer Palette, a document to recount a battle that may or may not have happened. For the next 3,000 years, every Egyptian king portrayed himself as a victor, even if he never fought a war. Narmer may have been no different. There's another important center of Dynasty Zero that might help solve the mystery of the Narmer Palette. It's 250 kilometers south of Abydos, in Hierakonpolis. This city had a pivotal role in the founding of the empire. For 500 years, this was one of the great power centers of the south, a vital part of King Narmer's rule. And here, during the 19th century, archaeologists found the Narmer palette. Archaeologist René Friedman has been working at Hierakonpolis for more than a decade, piecing together the few remaining traces of the ancient city. She and her team have painstakingly assembled a picture of what this place must have looked like. They've learned to tease vital information from mundane ruins, like this foundation of a simple house. She can even determine who it belonged to.
This is the house of a potter who, fortunately for us, burnt his house down with his own kiln, ensuring its incredible preservation because it's been cut into the native dirt, and otherwise it would have eroded away. But because he burnt it and made it like pottery, it's red like pottery now because of the fire, it's preserved it against the wind and the elements. So we can see and get a feel for how the ancient Egyptians at this time actually lived.
Until tragedy burnished his place in history, the potter lived with his family in a simple clay house like many of his neighbors. In the adjacent shop, he produced pottery for inhabitants of Hierakonpolis, at that time one of the greatest settlements in the world. Nearly 10,000 people lived here, where a huge temple dominated the city center. But fire isn't the only way the structures of Hierakonpolis survived. Archaeologists have excavated remains of central breweries and bakeries. The most remarkable discovery, however, came from outside the city. It's a cemetery for the Egyptian elite, with about 200 tombs. And not just people were buried here. Antelopes, 2 elephants, and several dogs have been found in the sand.
With our elite, they were all buried with many animals surrounding them, and it's unique in Egypt. We don't know exactly why they chose to do this, but we think it's a symbol of power. It's a symbol of their wealth and their control of nature.
Their burial practices may seem strange to us, but life in Hierakonpolis seems orderly and strikingly civilized. The city stretched for 5 kilometers along the Nile. When most Europeans still lived in fragmented settlements, the residents of Hierakonpolis enjoyed a flourishing society based on trade and cooperation. And that suggests that Narmer's battle never happened, and that the Egyptians of the country's north and south united peacefully. But it doesn't really prove it. To get to the truth, we need to dig further back into history to discover where the ancient Egyptians actually came from. The search for roots of the very first Egyptians takes us 500 kilometers across one of the driest deserts on Earth, the Sahara. Prehistorian and climatologist Rudolf Cooper has been exploring Africa's deserts for over 30 years. Now he heads to the Gilf Kebir Plateau to examine a cave tourists discovered a few years ago. The drifting sands of the Sahara have partially hidden the cave's interior. As the archaeologists go to work, they bring to light images unseen for up to 9,000 years. But Cooper and his team have years of work ahead of them, uncovering and interpreting the significance of this site. It may well be one of the world's largest prehistoric paintings. The pictures on the cave walls show ancient people dancing, like snapshots from a vivacious prehistoric world. Strange creatures, beasts without heads, hunters chasing deer, children at play, and animals not associated with the desert, antelopes, ostriches, even giraffes.
Wir haben einige Malereien dort gesehen.